before music.
Yeah.
Because I can escape with film in a way that I can't with music.
Right.
And we just wanted to make a film. So we just figured, let's tell the story that we know best. And I decided that the story that I knew best was this story. So the whole thing started in a making a film aspect, and then it became this project, unbeknownst to us. Go ahead, man.
No, I mean, that's exactly it. We wanted to make a film first. Okay, what kind of film do we want to make? What do we know about? And you know, the question came up of, can you even go down this road with this story? And we just started filming stuff. Two guys with a camera, like in the car, try and tell the story. Let's see what happens. And that's how it started.
Yeah, because there was no management, there was no agent, there was no studio, there was no finance. It was literally us with cameras.
Yeah, and was that liberating in a way?
Yes.
That there was no suit with their thumb?
Absolutely.
It's kind of the only way it could have gone with this story.
Sure. And you were telling me earlier that it was how long from concept to completion?
It's about 7 years.
7 years, wow. Yeah, that was amazing. And was it difficult for you to see him, your best friend for a long time, to revisit this?
Yeah, there was a lot of apprehension that I had to work through of, okay, if I'm going to direct this thing, there's certain things I'm going to have to ask, and there's certain traumatic things that he's probably going to have to open up again. And that was a very fine line of being a director and a best friend and this subject matter.
Sure.
So I had to walk that line, but yeah, there was it was difficult.
Sure.
But the working relationship that we had was very open and honest of, I can't deal with this right now, or yes, let's go down this road, or I think that we should use this. No, that's not happening, you know, but it worked. It worked fine.
It did. I thought it was a really, really powerful film, extremely powerful film. I watched it 4 times. I had to see it so many times. I mean, it was really, really good. Can I just ask?
For you.
Yeah, it was really great, right? Everybody. Pictures are okay, everybody, but please make sure your phones are on silent. Thank you. One of the things about the movie that struck me was the funeral. And you were talking about how much security was there and how it seemed like you didn't really get to say goodbye properly.
Right. Oh.
Do you still feel that way, even after making this?
No, I don't actually. I think that, you know, this project was done completely out of love, and God, it's so weird because I think that through the course of making this film, certainly had an opportunity to say goodbye, but then I also had an opportunity to reawaken, without sounding corny, hello, you know what I mean? Because there's a reawakening of great memories, and so that happened as a result of making this. And we went down this road, like, I didn't know, therapeutically speaking or emotionally, what this was going to do. I mean, it was really, I don't advise this.
There was a lot of times of that, of like, oh my God, is this fucking him up more?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was a lot of that.
Because there was no on-set therapist. You know, I didn't have peace over violence people on the ready. Certainly going into San Quentin, like, we just went there.
Wow, yeah.
Which was just...
I wanted to talk about that with you. Now, I don't know how you did that. That was so brave of you to confront the man. So brave. And I mean, walking into that kind of environment is already a little, I think, scary and intense. Yeah. And then you're actually face to face with this man. And now you last time you saw him, you were a boy. Yeah. And now you're a man now. Yeah. And did it occur to you to break his neck? I mean, did it?
I was open to whatever the experience was going to be, and if that was going to be, you know, if it was going to be a volatile.
You were just the two of you in the room.
Literally this close, and no glass.
Were you sitting down, or?
Yeah, 2 chairs, no glass, in a little cage, and you could see through the fence to other people visiting their loved ones. It was so weird. We go to the jail, and I don't know, did it make the movie? Where,
No, we took that.
You know, there's some outtakes, believe it or not, that are very funny.
San Quentin outtakes. That
Oh, they're amazing.
Very funny.
There was a girl in, so there's these little stalls, you know, and I'm sitting here with the killer, and then there's basically a chain link fence here, and then there's other people. And there was this girl, I swear to God, she was the hottest girl you've ever seen.
Did you get her number?
I was hitting on her
Yeah,
in the
I knew
thing.
it.
So I'm waiting for them
Of course you would.
to bring him out, and I'm like looking through the fence, and I'm like, you here to see a boyfriend? No? Husband? No? What are you doing after this? It was awful. It was just hitting on a girl in San Quentin. But
The funny part of the story is we're in the car on the ride home, and all the emotions go for an hour or two. You know, it's a 6-hour drive.
Yeah.
And then at one point, he's like, I gotta admit something. And I thought, oh no, what? He's like, remember that girl that we saw out in the business? She was sitting next to me. I started hitting on her while I was waiting for him to walk in.
And I'm still kind of secretly hoping she reaches out over Twitter, like,
You're gonna see it
hey,
and be like-
I was in Cage 6, saw your movie. But,
Hashtag San Quentin.
yeah, that'd be great.
It's like
But
a where are you person.
also, I think there was an element of just like being behind bars that made it hotter.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Like so forbidden.
But no, he didn't know I was coming.
Right.
He had no idea I was coming.
Yeah.
And so I was prepared for it to be like volatile and violent, or emotional and screaming and crying, or, you know, I didn't know what. And he comes in, and, you know, 30 years later, this guy's like shuffling in, all chained up, super old dude. And I didn't have that experience. You know, my experience, I had to be open to the experience. And one of the things I learned about not having that experience is that this is a guy who's not interested in being accountable.
Right.
He's not interested in, you know, talking about feeling guilty or sorry. It's not about that for him. He's a sociopath, psychopath. And so knowing that that wasn't a possibility, that I'm not going to get that, it was about my experience. And for me to not put myself through that kind of darkness, negative energy, and just kind of have an empowering moment where I just realized this guy's getting his, and I'm going back out to the world,
Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, everything's the way it's supposed to be.
Sure.
And I think it was just more an exercise, believe it or not, of just, like, I hate to sound corny, but walking through fear.
Sure. Yeah.
You know? So for me, there's really nothing that life is going to present to me that's going to be as gnarly
As what
as doing that.
Right. Or even just the loss of your mother. I think that for you,
For sure.
for what I know about you
But the
personally-
difference is the loss of my mother was not on my terms.
Right.
So this was on my terms, which made it empowering. Go ahead.
No, just a lot of that, of the way, of your coping mechanisms seem to be courting death in many ways. And I think that perhaps that was, I mean, was that your way of, you've seen the worst part of life.
Yeah.
What else can happen? You're prepared for it, you're gonna experience it, and you're gonna turn it into something that is good for you in some ways,
Yeah.
you know, sex and drugs and things.
Yeah, those things aren't horrible.
They're not terrible, no. Unless you're him and you have to see the aftermath.
Yeah. Not fun.
Not fun, yeah. And one of the things also that impressed me a lot about the film was learning so much about your mom, and this was, I think, a really beautiful tribute to her and what she meant to the community and your neighborhood and to your family. I mean, there were so many people who were just friends of your family that were so torn up by her loss. And I know that it said in the film that you were supposed to be with her the night of the film. Do you have that survivor's remorse at all, that you were supposed to be there and you weren't?
Not really.
Really?
I think that when I was younger, I struggled with that a little bit, but I think really early on, I think I was fortunate enough to have the insight that at 15, that kind of awareness of how to deal with a situation like this isn't always at the ready.
Sure.
And we didn't have, you know, like we were talking about outside, we didn't have that phrase domestic violence. We didn't have terminology. We didn't have a website to go to, and was I going to call the cops? Like I didn't, I was 15 years old, and
Sure.
I didn't have the capacity to know how to handle that. And I think that, without trying to let myself off the hook, like just to be aware of the fact that I'm 15 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it is what it is, and at that age, the last thing you're going to imagine is that a death is going to take place.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is why on a domestic violence level, I would hope for this to be a very cautionary tale.
I think it is. I mean, I'm a victim of domestic violence in the home. You know that, and for me, I related a lot to the story that you had there, and I think this hopefully inspires a lot of people by your courage to embrace this and to be authentic about it. I mean, there's nothing hidden in this at all. It's uncut day for sure. And Todd, you were saying 7 years, and so this seems like a huge project to undertake. Just not just the excavation of his emotions, which aren't always easy, right?
Right.
And then, but then just putting it together, developing the narrative and all that. I mean, what was your process for that?
A lot of it, because of the nature of the film, because it's a documentary film, we don't have a script. We're not working off of a script.
Right.
There's the story that this happened, but there's a lot of you speak to someone or you interview someone and they say something that takes you into a different tangent that you have to go explore that to see if there's something there or if there's something valuable or if it's just, it doesn't add to the story necessarily. So there was a lot of that, which is why it took so long too. I think that one of the reasons also why it took so long was because of what you just said. It's a perfect word, excavating his emotions and stuff, and you can't just, we're on deadline, it wasn't that kind of environment, and it couldn't be.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why it took time.
Also, I had to go to New York for months at a time. I was on tour.
Right.
Like we'd be literally on a roll, and then I'd have to take off for 3 months at a time, and that happened throughout the course.
Yeah.
So, but I think that in a weird way that was to our advantage, because I was, no, maybe not. I don't know.
Well, it would give him a break,
Sure.
and it would give me a chance to really get in there with our editor and try and form stuff together so that when he comes back, he could present it in the, we could present it to him in the possible way where.
I'm laughing because I realized I would have much rather cranked this thing out in 6 months.
Yeah.
Like sitting with it for 7 years. Like,
you would have. How do you think I feel?
Well, but the time off, I think maybe it would give you some separation from it because it is such a personal thing, and also give you some time to also develop that narrative. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, that's great. All right. Well, let's see. What else do I have? I'm very analog. I wrote down notes.
I know, I like that.
Yeah, see? Analog. That's what they call it now. I don't know why. Millennials call it analog.
What about this bottom question?
That bottom question?
Yeah.
I can't read it. Did you write that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, what is this? Is it true Dave has a what?
A massive cock.
Oh, a massive cock. Dave, is it... There's probably a bunch of people that can answer that question.
Hey,
Touche.
Many people.
don't answer it. Don't answer it.
Send photos right here, everybody. Yes. Okay. So we talked about survivor's guilt. There's a lot of talk about fear in the movie. There's a lot of talk about fear. But what about rage? I mean, rage turned inward is depression, as they say. So.
Yes.
Did you?
Wow.
Was that an experience for you?
Not really, and that's
Wow.
really interesting. We didn't really get into the rage thing. My rage is still very much in me, and it unfortunately manifests itself when there's somebody in line in front of me at Starbucks, and they haven't looked at the menu until they get to the register, and then they look up, and you're like, "Are you fucking kidding me? You've been sitting here like 20 minutes."
What's a venti?
Gonna
Yeah,
look
but that's
up
not
there?
because of the event that happened, because I have the same thing.
I know, but my point is that it's like
You're just an
manifests-
asshole is
Yeah,
what it
but
is.
it manifests itself in my daily life on the little things. Like the big things, for some reason, because I can point to them, because I can understand them, because I know what they are, they're easy to therapeutically get into and talk about and analyze. And my rage now kind of manifests itself in, like I said, traffic or
Right.
for some reason, if I'm in an elevator and then the doors start to close, and someone's like, hold up, and they stick their hand in.
Does that just sets you off?
Right.
That's it.
But if I'm on the other side of it,
And someone
and I'm
doesn't?
running to it, and they let the doors close, I freak out too.
That's
So I
it.
can't.
So basically, the sun orbits Dave.
It's generally it's
Selfish bastard.
Yeah, that's what it is. Entitled.
That's wonderful. Okay, so and your mom. This is a lot about your mom. It's a lot about you and how you've developed. And did this bring you closer to her? Did this? You know, I lost my grandparents at a really young age, and I don't remember. My grandmother died on my birthday from alcoholism and a drug overdose, and I was 13. And I don't remember, it was such a traumatic moment for my family, but I don't remember the sound of her voice. I can't remember it. Did this bring back any of that for you? Were you able to reconnect to her in that way?
Yes. A lot of really great experiences with my mom took place in the home that we lived in on that street. And, you know, when this event happened, you know, my memory was just of the crime and the darkness and the horrific nature of the whole thing, and having gone through the story and putting it in a linear context and speaking to her old friends as an adult, it opened up so many memories of good experiences with her, and yeah, absolutely redefined my relationship with her before all of this. So, excuse me, and that wasn't something we were looking to do. It was a byproduct of doing the work.
I think that's great. What do you miss most about your mom?
I think that we had I miss the fact that we just had a relationship where we understood each other and it didn't need words. And she could kind of read my mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And let that mind be, as opposed to telling my mind what it should be.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think that's the element, yeah.
That's amazing. And how hard was he to direct?
How much time do you have? It wasn't hard because he's not acting, you know what I mean?
But,
So
you know,
yeah, in that sense,
him together, to
there,
get him.
I think that it's a testament to the friendship that we have, that there were times that I knew I can wrangle him, and there are times like, don't even bother,
Right.
and that helped because it's like, okay, I have other stuff that I need to do with this project, you know,
Yeah.
and I'll focus on that. So it wasn't all that hard. I mean, as far as personality, you know, it wasn't all that hard.
Something you both wanted to do.
Yeah, and we kind of had that unspoken, like, let's do this or let's not, and we both kind of understood that. So it was easy in that sense, and what was hard about it was like, okay, we're gonna have to get into this emotional stuff, and there's gonna be a lot of when the camera's not rolling type of work that took place. That was, you know, difficult, but you're gonna do it, you know what I mean? So
one of the things that I thought worked really well and made this feel even more personal was how they weren't talking at the screen, they were actually talking to you. That's the way they felt, and that worked really well, I thought, because it felt like you were sitting in on a conversation versus just someone telling you a story of a really traumatic thing that had happened. I thought that was great.
yeah, I think that was more of a choice in the sense of certain people that we were meeting with, that it would be easier for them even to talk to Dave. And then there were others that I did, but it worked.
It was also because we just really didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah,
and literally, like, we weren't filmmakers before this. You know, we never made a feature film. So certain days he shot stuff, certain days I was there. Like, it just kind of, there was no formula. We kind of learned how we went. And I think, I like the fact that it's really handmade feeling. And I think that if we had done it again or knew too much, it wouldn't be the same picture.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think that comes through, but in a really authentic way, and I think that's what makes this so powerful, is that it feels real, it feels authentic, there's nothing contrived about it. It's almost as if we're joining you on this discovery, this self-discovery. I think that was handled really, really well.
I mean, we essentially started this thing on iMovie, you know?
Right.
I just didn't know what we were doing.
Well,
give it a whirl.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think hopefully, I mean, as someone who experienced domestic violence, this helped me a lot, just watching it come to terms with what happened to my childhood as well. I mean, there's a lot of things that you experienced and that you did to cope. I mean, coping mechanisms, the drugs, which that was really difficult, as someone who loves you very much, to watch that part of the film. That was really, really hard. How hard was that for you do you think that was something that you did because of the trauma, or is it just something that is a byproduct of
I think
sort of
that
darkness
I said it well in the film, that I used the trauma to do drugs because I was well on my way to being a drug addict before this event.
Okay.
And I also want to point out there are millions and millions of people in the world that go through traumatic events and don't become junkies.
Right.
You know, so it's pretty important for me to be aware of that. I think that I used it as an excuse to get away with murder.
I need a
But yeah, I mean, you know, I was like, what can you say to the guy who's got the murdered family member, you know?
Right.
Don't do drugs.
Right, exactly, yeah. Who's going to tell you no?
Yeah,
Right.
but no, I think it's important to make that message pretty clear, that it wasn't, you know.
It wasn't, yeah. But, I mean, I think it felt like part of you were courting death in some ways.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the darker, the better, the more dangerous, the better.
One of the times that made me realize I had to stop doing drugs was because I couldn't go far enough, you know? Couldn't get high enough, couldn't go close enough. I think, you know, there was a time I was shooting liquid ketamine and speed. Awesome. Which is fucking great. And you know, you kind of go out like you know, because it's like, you know, it's a tranquilizer. And I woke up on the floor, honestly, like, I mean, it sounds funny now, but I was my face had become inside out, and I was trying to put it back into the right side in, or however you do it. And I also had the thought, like, I'm still not high enough. Like, and then having that thought was like scary. Like, well, I better do something like this, because the next step is
might have a problem.
Well, the next step is death.
Right.
That's the next, you know, there's no more high.
If you feel like your face is on inside out,
Yeah, and digging it too, you know.
Yeah,
like
I love this.
Yeah.
Where am I going now?
How can I get this happening more? So that was an awareness, and I think I was just destined to be a hardcore drug addict, and this just helped. You know, this threw kerosene on it. Yeah.
Right. It was your way of sort of justifying it.
Yeah.
And the film opens with you talking about a dream you have about your mom, and that you wake up, and then she's mad at you that you found her. What do you think that means?
God, you know.
Is it some rejection?
Yeah, it's got to be some kind of weird rejection fantasy.
You feel like she rejected you because she was murdered.
Yeah, like that was a choice she made.
Right,
like,
yeah.
you know, and then
But I mean, it's an emotional thing. She dated a man that was abusive, and that's very typical in domestic violence situations where people feel they blame the victim in some ways, which is victim shaming, which is terrible. But in some ways, it's just a natural thing, especially when you're a child, to feel that they've abandoned you in some way.
Yes, and it's a very confusing thing to try and process at that age. But that dream was a recurring dream that I tried to work out over and over again. And I will, you know, incidentally, and I hadn't thought of this until you brought it up, I haven't had it since we made this film.
I was going to ask you, yeah.
No, I haven't.
Right on. I think we need to go to. Do you need to, you want to say this? Okay. I think we need to go to audience questions now. All right. How was that, everybody? Not too bad.
That was great. Thank you, Osam.
Okay. Does anybody have questions for Dave or Todd? It's hard for me to see. Sorry? Where? Who? There. You, sir. Yes. You.
Now that you've gone through your addiction and you're sober,
Yeah.
I have a couple friends that are in jail, and I'd like to give us, I have a friend that made a movie called Dope.
Okay.
Death or in prison, eventually.
Okay.
How did you avoid jail?
That's a really good question.
He's a
I'll tell
rock
you.
star?
Well, there's a real reason. I didn't leave my house. Like that's, you know.
82-inch screen keeps you there. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The 82-inch screen keeps you there.
It does. You know what I mean? Like
You didn't have that
listen,
then, though.
I didn't have it then, but like you know, I have a lot of friends that got arrested, and like, you know, it's sad to say, you know, Scott Weiland is just passed. Was a good friend of mine, and he you know, he would get arrested all the time, and he would come over to my house in the middle of the night, just fucked up. Like he was, you know, he'd be seeing ghosts, you know, in a state of psychosis, and he'd come in my house and be freaking out, and I'm like, hey man, you know, it's all good. And he's like, but don't you see the ghosts? And I'm like, I had my wits more about me. I was like, well, I see them, but I know it's because I'm on drugs. That's what you got to remember.
Yeah.
And he would leave his house all the time and get behind the wheel, and then he'd get arrested. And I just was like, why am I going anywhere?
Yeah.
Because first of all, the outside world is terrifying. I hate human beings. There's nothing to do out there.
What are you doing?
Fuck it, I'm staying here. So,
Less
which
than-
is
That's pretty much still that way.
I still do that, and they keep making great television, like House of Cards. I almost didn't come to this.
Dude, Walking Dead's on tonight. I'm just Walking Dead for this tonight. Thank you for your questions, sir. Appreciate it. Anybody else?
I actually have one more question.
Okay.
Are we doing follow-ups? I don't know if we're doing follow-ups, buddy. I'm sorry, what?
It was about the future
Yeah.
and your commitment to yourself
Yeah.
and what you plan on doing to stay sober.
Well, that's a completely different. You know, that's a completely different conversation.
That's, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, that's, you know, there's put it this way, there are 12-step organizations out there that are available to anybody, and I've been known to frequent them. But to give specifics about that is one of the traditions of where I go, where we don't talk about that publicly.
Okay,
You
thank
know
you.
what I'm saying?
Thank you for your question. Appreciate it. Sorry, you in the back there. Yeah, you right there. Yep.
I'm curious if, as a result of the process of making the film, if there's a lesson or a new tool in your kit that you'll use, that you'll apply to whatever you're doing next on any level, whether it's musically or, you know, visually or performance art. Is there anything as a result of just making the film that you now know, I'm going to apply that in everything
Yes.
I do from here on?
Yes, there's probably different answers for both of us. For me, okay, so what's the main thing about this film is you want to get into the crime thing and the killer and the this and the that, and that's all cool and it's all relevant and important, but for me, this was all about moving past trauma, because I was traumatized as a kid, and this was something that affected my everyday life. And trauma, as it turns out, doesn't have a timetable. It doesn't know how many years have gone by. It stays in the human body, and it manifests itself in our physiology in a real tangible way, in our brain chemistry. And it can be re-triggered like that by anything. It can be re-triggered by a scary brush with a car screeching to a halt outside, and then all of a sudden it all comes back and floods your body like a physical thing. And so for me, going through this film, put the story, the traumatic event, in a narrative. Okay, so it's in a linear narrative now, which makes sense to the brain. The brain can understand beginning, middle, end, here's the story, and here it is packaged. So it's not these free-floating, scary thoughts suffocating the brain. And that makes it really difficult to come to terms with. So putting the story in a narrative has been a really helpful tool in terms of dealing with trauma and stopping that cycle, along with a lot of other things. And then in terms of just the process of making the film and walking through to see the killer, I mean, there's so many lessons there. One is that we can pretty much do whatever the hell it is we want to do, you know, because we didn't know how to make a movie, and we wanted to make a movie, and we made a movie. It took a long time and a lot of work, but that's number one. And number two is that there's really nothing left in the world that I can think of that's going to be scarier for me than going into that prison. So if I get nervous about sitting in front of you guys and talking, or if I get nervous about going on stage or whatever the hell it is, I've already done the big scary thing. So everything else is kind of a piece of cake.
Anyone else? Oh, he's right there, please. Yes.
When I be able to buy this soon on Blu-ray, DVD? And I got a second question,
Yeah.
real quick. What's next for Todd?
You can find this film on iTunes right now. It's on a lot of the VOD platforms and a lot of the digital platforms as far as like iTunes and Amazon and all that kind of stuff. We don't know if we're gonna get to the pressing DVDs for sale part yet. That's like a distribution company question. And go ahead.
I was against it. They wanted to, and I said no DVDs.
Bastard.
Well, you know why, right?
And what's next for
What?
you?
Because
Yes.
DVD's nuts.
What's next for you, sir?
What's next for me is we are in the process of launching a production company. We have a bunch of scripted stuff that we're going to do, and there'll be more to come on that. But the thing that this film was an entree to was to be filmmakers. So we're going to work. We have a bunch of projects that we're developing right now.
Okay. Who else has a question? You, sir, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Dave, I have a question concerning the film.
Sure.
Actually, the one scene that affected me, and I don't think anybody knew, was when you were actually tied up.
Yeah.
God bless you for sharing that. And I just have to say, my parents died when I was young, so I can identify with that. The one thing that I have to ask you is why didn't you share that with your mom?
Why didn't I share that with my mom? Because I think I touch upon it in the film. At that age, I was afraid of the conflict that would ensue. And I felt that I was being protective because, you know, this is a volatile guy and I've just seen this side of him. And if I say something that sends one of my parents in this guy's face, who knows what the fuck's gonna happen? You know what I mean? So I kind of had to internalize it, you know, and, you know, in hindsight, sure, I wish I had, you know what I mean? But, you know, I think that this guy was, you know, he was hell-bent on doing what he did, and it was gonna happen one way or the other. And, you know, if you believe in fates, it is what, you know, things are gonna unfold the way they do, but that's why, because I didn't want to instigate a confrontation that I felt could be lethal to somebody.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a question? Anybody in the back? I can't really see through the lines. Ah, yes, sir. You, there. Yes, put your hand up. Mm-hmm.
Dave, you never cried in the film. Why?
I don't think it was a choice to do or don't. It just, you know, it's a real movie. That's what really happened, is I didn't cry. I believe me, I've shed tears over this.
Anybody else?
Sorry I wasn't open and brutal enough for you. Jesus
Sorry,
Christ.
bro. That's great. Yes, please. You.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a child of domestic violence, and I feel like I lost my mom, not because, you know, she passed or anything, but I lost her because of that.
Yeah.
And I feel like I never, sadly, it was my mother and my father, and I feel like I really never got to know my father because of this
I'm sorry to hear that.
domestic violence issue that I never really came to terms with. And when I watched the movie,
Well, let me say this to you. First of all, thank you for sharing that.
Yes,
And thanks for being open. And I feel you, okay? And I've been there, and I know where you're at. I know. And let me tell you this. I didn't just out of nowhere make this movie. I've been years and years of therapy and support and help. And please, I implore you to find some kind of help. Just somewhere safe.
now I feel like I've come to terms, you know, kind of closed a chapter in my life, I guess you would say. My
Yeah.
father passed away, and I never really got to know him. That's how like I always lived with a stranger, and I've always been very close to my mom, but I feel like I lost my mom.
Well, we have people here if you want to talk to, if you guys want to raise your hand.
They're right
Right
behind you.
there, behind
And
you.
I'll say, you look beautiful, you're quite articulate, you've survived, and you've come out on top of this thing, and we're all real proud of you for being here and sharing that with us. Thank you very, very much. Beautiful. Yes, you in the back there in the center. Yep.
Just to follow up on what she's saying, the thing that stood out for me was after you talked about being handcuffed in the bathroom, is that you couldn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
And I think, especially for children of domestic violence, there's that shame.
Yes.
And this movie was so important because I think it releases some of that stigma. And getting with that woman who just spoke to talk about it. And I think that this movie is important for women of domestic violence, but also for children. And
100%.
That learned helplessness. And I wondered if you had felt that shame and that helplessness, and any of your behaviors that you talk about were punishing yourself. And have you learned to forgive yourself for what you weren't able to do at 15?
I think so. I think that shame is certainly something that is such a dangerous thing to hang on to and feel, and because it prevents us from seeking help. You know, a lot of people find themselves in domestically violent situations, and they're ashamed that they're in that situation, so they don't want to reach out for help, and then it's too late. You know, so I appreciate bringing that up. I could talk for an hour on shame, but we can. And I think it's no mistake that, you know, I went as hard as I did in some of my escapism places because, you know, I'm combating a whole lot of stuff. But I would say that that kills people.
Sure.
Shame.
I think one of the things about this film that helps so much is that victim shaming is such an obstacle for a lot of victims to get over. They're victimized twice. They're victimized first by the violence in the home, and then when they come out publicly to speak about it, they're victimized again. And your struggle and your bravery and your authenticity in this helps people in some way. It empowers them, and that's what makes you so beautiful. I love you so much. Isn't you wonderful? Okay, you and the friend, you've been very polite and patient. Yes.
I'm just curious, if you were able to go back and whisper in your friend's ear and during the days and months after that event, what did you need? What could they do different? What could they do to help you out?
Oh man, I don't know. Like, to help me cope with that?
Yeah.
Man, I don't know if there's anything. You know, I think that it put me on a journey that I had to have. You know, I had to be on. I mean, really, what anybody needs in a situation like that is just people around them that love them, that can listen, really listen, you know, and just be there. And like, you know, a good friend, there's a lot I can say about this, but I will say laughter is fucking important, man.
Yeah, it is.
You know what I mean? And like, you know, sometimes even today when we go through some of our darkest, you know, human emotions, like, if we can't call each other up and laugh about it, we're doing something wrong. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
and that's a vital element. So I would say, if anything, like, a good friend's gonna keep you lighthearted, you know? A good friend is not gonna make you feel outside and different and, oh my God, it's my friend who went the really dark thing. All right, you guys, my friend's gonna come with us, but he's really fucked up, so just be cool around him. Like, that doesn't help, you know?
Yeah. I think you do a really good job too.
Is your fucked up friend coming? No, all right.
Is he coming? Oh man, why did you tell me he was coming? I think you've always done a really good job about making other people feel comfortable, even though you know that what you're carrying around and the dark stuff that's happened with you. You go out of your way to make other people feel comfortable by making it funny.
Yeah.
And that's really
by making people feel extremely uncomfortable.
Exactly, which is funny, right? Which is
It's funny to me anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a couple more. We have time for like a couple more. You in the back who's waving frantically.
I really feel it's important to say thank you very much for sharing your mother's story too, because you honored her memory. And
Thank you.
my son was murdered, so I know how it is.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Sorry, yeah.
Tragically, because it changes your world upside down.
Oh yeah.
I help victims now as a victim service rep for the district attorney's office. And I'd like to invite you to be the victim speaker next year at the Crime Victims' Rights.
I would love to do it. Would love to do it. Thank you.
Okay, one more. We have time for one more question. One more great question. There, in the back. You wait. Yeah, on the end.
Burning desire.
Well, I don't have a great question, but I just wanted to say, Dave, that your mother is beautiful.
She's smoking hot,
Look
huh?
at this. Look at his jeans right there. Look at that. Okay, a question though. We need a question. One last question. Okay, you right here.
How is your relationship now with your dad? I mean, I could tell that you had a pretty good relationship with your parents.
I was about to be inappropriate.
Shocking. Your dad.
Yeah, great. I mean, I'm gonna see him in like 2 days. So I see him all the time. He's great. You know, me and my dad get along great.
Well, everybody, please, thank you for coming.
One more. This girl back here has
Ooh,
her hand
that
up
one.
over and over and over again. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Let's give it a whirl. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Listen, you
This is
know.
on you. I'll talk
Hey
all
man,
night.
a 2-hour
She's the
movie
one
about
giving-
me isn't enough.
This
I need
one is
10
giving
more
me the
minutes.
wrap up. She's the one giving me the wrap up. The wrap it up.
And then I'm going to do a collection of my acoustic numbers after
Let's
this.
do this. Okay, darling, you on the end there, yes.
Did you, Todd mentioned something about the reading the court documents. How did you get them? And then, Dave, did you read them?
Oh, interesting. At one point, I had to hire a private investigator to find people that we didn't know that were tied to the case, whether they, you know, policemen, people on the scene, even relatives and friends, and he was able to secure that. That's public knowledge that you can get it. You know, it's easy to get, and so I got those pretty early on, and just so I could read and see what went on during this case. And I don't know, did you read all the way through?
No, fuck
I
no.
think I highlighted passages
Here.
for you.
Like I lived it, honey. I'm like, I'm not gonna read this thing.
But you read it. And,
Yeah, I read it.
And in
I
the
read it.
film, you said that it was really difficult to know what your friend had gone through.
Here's
right?
why, because
Yeah.
he can sit and tell me.
Sure.
And we're friends, and I know his
Make
cadence,
fun
and
of
yeah,
it,
and we
and-
can. But when you read it in a legal sense, and you're literally hearing every word that went on, you know, it was more impactful. Actually, the separation of it and reading it was it really drove it home, and it's true. Like, I can't believe all this happened to my friend, and I just can't believe all of it happened as a case as well. You know, it was very strange to read that kind of stuff and have that kind of connection. So yeah, it was difficult.
Okay, we can take a couple of more questions. Sorry, this is too much fun. All
I'm
right.
actually having a good time. It's like group therapy for me.
See? Yeah. You right
Walk
here.
out of
yeah.
here healed. Anybody else?
Right here, yep.
Oh yeah, go ahead, bud.
This is so surreal right now. Well, I just I'd like to say that, you know, watching your film really helped me a little bit, because I just lost my father about a year ago in a car accident.
Wow.
So,
Sorry, man.
yeah. But because I'm also very, you know, musically involved, what song do you feel like, you know, in James Addiction, do you feel that you feel the most, you know, when you're playing with the band?
You know, I don't know. There's a song we did called "Then She Did," which is fucking the heavy one, you know. And yeah, maybe that one. You know, I identify with that. You know, Perry and I relate because there are elements of that song that are about his mother and mine. So we, you know, we come together on that. And
Sure, you there. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Dave, first of all, I want to thank you for everything you're doing to the world, because I think that the world needs more people like you. But I want to ask you something. After all this, you feel free now?
That's a good question. Do I feel free? Yeah, I would say free of this, or in life.
Yeah, in life.
I mean, the drag is that life still has to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I still got to go to the DMV.
The short answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I still got to go to the DMV, and I hate that. And you know, but yes, I mean, for the most part, everything is very small. You know, everything that hinders us is so small. And I would say that it's an ongoing work in progress, but I would say that I've never been happier and freer in my life.
Yeah, I believe that. That's it. Anybody else? Question? Yes, you right there.
I wanted to ask you, when you left the prison, I am also a child of domestic violence, and it was my stepfather.
Wow.
And obviously I hated him through my life, but when he died and he asked for me, I didn't hate him anymore. Looking at him as an old dude, like you said in the movie, I felt a sense of almost sorry for him. It was just all gone.
Yeah.
And I had so much peace, and just a huge thing was lifted off my back because there was no more anger.
Mm.
No more hate.
Wow.
That's exactly, I got chills hearing you say that, because that's exactly what I was trying to get at when we talked about how I didn't have a rageful experience, because all that's going to do is that's just going to be the architect of our own misery, is to carry that around, because that person is not going to be aware of it. They're not going to suffer. We're going to suffer to carry that shit around with us. So I'm really happy to hear that you found some peace.
It's like defeating the giant as well, right? It's like once you see them for what they are, the imagination, what you remember them to be like.
For sure.
And once you see them again, yeah. Congratulations on getting well. That's fantastic. Yeah, bravo.
Yeah, can you pick that from the last one over there?
Oh, last one, yep. You waving, yes, right there on the end. Yes, you, hi.
Dave, I have a question. Has the death of your mother affected the way that you treat women or your long-term?
Girl, I'll answer that question.
That's all the time that we have.
Let me tell you.
Like, are you saying, am I afraid of like relationships and getting into too deep with, I don't know if that's appropriate. Of course it has. Of course.
Are you a puddle or an ocean, dear?
I'm the genius who said, hey, let's have a Q&A.
That's right. Yes, you are. You're also the man who hit on a woman inside a prison.
Yeah, I think, of course. I think it's affected, I think this whole scenario has affected how I am in relationships, whether it's men or women. There's trust, there's abandonment, there's trust. This is somebody who was in our home that was a close member of our inner circle that betrayed us in the most profound way. So, I would say that has been affected more than how I am with women. I think my ability to trust anybody has been tampered with more so.
Can I just add on to that? So, when I first met Dave, I was completely dick to him. I was.
I know.
She was.
I remember.
Like, he always treated me with kindness and respect and just wouldn't stop being nice.
He's a nice guy.
Thanks, Kat.
Get out of here.
Dave will cut you that check that he owes you after the show.
Yeah. You can pick up the $20 after the show.
But can I just say, I am so honored and touched how many people came out tonight to support this.
And
And
all the people watching on Facebook. Can you see
oh yeah, hey Facebook.
We're live streaming this on Facebook, everybody. So
Yeah.
a round of applause for Facebook.
But I mean, I'm so moved by how many survivors there are here. I had no idea that we were touching anybody. So
Oh, indeed, yeah.
thank you so much for being here.
That's right. And I think that's great. I'm glad you said that there are no victims, there are only survivors. Please remember that. And big round of applause for Dave and Todd. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you guys so
Really
much.
appreciate it. Thank you.